Welcome to the Independence by Design podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a business owner and ways to get unstuck from the day-to-day so we can design a business that gives us a life of independence. How do we build a predictable revenue engine that lands revenue on our income statement every single month, month over month, at the growth rates that we need in order to hit our 5-year valuation target? Well, the answer would be a chief revenue officer, also known as the CRO. If you're not familiar with that term or who that person is and what they are responsible for, you're in the right spot. I've got my dear friend, Kim Clark, on the show today. She's going to be breaking down what a chief revenue officer does and then what they should be responsible for, and then how that leads into a predictable revenue engine. She's going to walk us through her 9 modules and the assessment of what good looks like for a chief revenue officer. And don't worry if you're not capable of hiring someone because a CRO is expensive. We walk through at the end of the episode how to think about marketing and sales and how to unify marketing, sales, and strategy to effectively we need to have revenue land on the income statement every single month. So how do we integrate all these functions inside of a predictable revenue engine? And Kim's going to be breaking that down for us. She's the perfect person to do so. I've really enjoyed collaborating with her over the last couple of years, since she and her father, Alan Bolio, ended up exiting ITR Economics, that Kim was a driving force into helping grow ITR. And she was responsible for all of sales and all of marketing inside of the predictable revenue engine. So she's going to be walking us through that. So by the end of this episode, you're going to know what good looks like and then how to actually measure and monitor the different KPIs and the different functions that will help you build out predictable revenue. I know you're going to enjoy the podcast, so stay tuned. Here's my episode with Kim Clark. Okay, Kim, here we are. I'm going to be short-winded on my intro. People know who you are. Potbelly Billy and his review. Okay, that's
not today.
So yeah, what we're going to try and accomplish in this hour-long conversation is, what does a chief revenue officer do, and what does good look like? As I had said prior to hitting record, the podcast I did with Pat Hobby about what does a CFO do and what does good look like got a lot of attention. I think the finance function is more, knowable. People like really understand kind of like what like the mechanics are. I mean, it's still obviously a major problem, but like I don't think it's as ubiquitous of like people having a chief revenue officer and how that differentiates between a CMO and a sales director. So let's start with your definition of a CRO, how that fits into maybe people's current mental models, whether we need to do some reconciliation. Then we're going to unpack your thoughts on what that person does.
That sounds great. And I have my notes over here. So I'm going to just keep deferring to look over here. Off the top of my head, though, there's 3 main buckets that you and I have been discussing for a while now, though. The CRO is in charge of the business architecture. They're in charge of the complete journey, womb to tomb. Have never heard of you all the way through. I am now an evangelist for your business. And they are in charge of the systems and predictability of the machine that I just mentioned in the 2 previous categories. So it's not campaigns. It's not lead magnets. It's not individual specific sales strategies where it says, I'm going to go back and target customers from 6 months ago. It is the holistic, you are in charge of revenue, and therefore you have to make sure that these 3 segments of the business and where you fit in the market are all making sense and working together seamlessly.
I think it's so, it's going to be fun for people to listen to this because that's what you did at ITR. And I have similar experiences, but when I met you, I was like, okay, this truly is, you're not just marketing. And I think even in some of the podcasts that people might have listened to with you in the past, we're going to try and elevate above all of the other tactical shit that we've talked about, which are still important. But when you and I started collaborating, is I look at a plan. So if an owner has like, I want to go from 30 million in revenue to 60 million. I want to go from, call it 2.5 million in normalized EBITDA to 6. One of my clients has a similar path to that. It's like revenue. There are 3 buckets in the income statement: revenue, gross margins, and normalized EBITDA. Someone has to land revenue in that income statement. And if it's literally every month is a column, so it's 60 columns, how's it going to land there? And all of the stuff that you're talking about nests inside of that. So let's talk about like when you like chief revenue officer, how does that compare to maybe certain mental models or incorrect assumptions or narratives people have about marketing, sales being siloed, CMOs, directors of sales, compared to revenue architecture, womb to tomb, and systems? And maybe you can give some more explanations on that.
A fundamental difference from what I just heard in the description you mentioned is this whole idea of silos. Those walls need to be knocked down. Sales, marketing, operations, financial department, it all needs to work in tandem, hand in hand, because they all impact one another. So recently, as a call you and I were on, where somebody had brought up the production side of it. Well, if sales and marketing is crushing it, but production doesn't have capacity, then it cripples the business X, Y, Z. Yep. The silos have to be no more. The entire business is the engine, and it all has to be firing in the right order in order for it to hit the income statements the way that you're saying.
And the ownership operating system that I've been working on wraps all of that together and aligns it with the owner's goals of time, cash flow, wealth, and then the operations nests inside of that. And then inside of the operating system is predictable revenue, which is module 5. And like the financials is where I've been bringing Pat on, and Pat and I've been collaborating on the 3-statement model and having the CFO own the financials. I've been talking about the COO. So my definition would be the chief operating officer, who is responsible for margin and gross profit, would need to be working. So all the CFO, the COO, and the CRO are all working in tandem, because it's one income statement pointed towards the cash flow and the valuation targets that the owner wants. So within the revenue bucket that you're now, I think we've given the context to the listener, saying, okay, now we're in the revenue bucket. You're saying that the chief revenue officer is responsible for that revenue landing on that income statement. And inside your 3 modules are the revenue or the business architecture, the revenue architecture, womb to tomb, and systems. And I know you've got some questions that you would like to ask any CRO to say, okay, if you're a true CRO, you should be able to answer these questions. Do you want to start there, or do you want to start maybe at a high level explanation of each one of those modules?
Maybe even just the high level for the first one, the business architecture, because it's really vague. What does that mean? I don't think anyone listening on this call is going to immediately intuitively know what we mean is included in there. And so by that, I mean your brand, your market, and your target customer. Those are what breaks that down. And so nested within inside those 3 buckets is everything else, from your competitive advantage to your offers mapped out, to your ICP, to your total addressable market, to the psychology of the ICP, all the things that people think are strategies are really just needed known facts that build and feed into this overall architecture of the business.
Love it. And then that strategy and that revenue architecture then leads to then this womb to tomb, which I've really, I love how you said that. Different way of saying customer journey, right? And,
and I'll memorable.
I'm going to digress because you and I have to do this. So my friend and Jimmy Fritz, who owns the wedding shop it's a Grand Ave in Minnesota. And then there's Babies on Grand. No. So it's he doesn't own it, but it's wedding shop, Babies on Grand, and then there's a funeral.
I was going to ask, is there also a funeral?
So literal customer journey. So yeah,
it's perfect, all in one spot.
Yeah, you just hopefully you're not going all at once.
Yeah, that's true.
So womb to tomb customer journey is the second phase before systems. And so what is in the womb to tomb customer journey that is important once people have their revenue architecture and their strategy?
So a lot of what's in there is going to be your journey is mapped out. So you can't just have the idea in your head. You actually have it mapped out. What the very beginning, an example I use a lot with clients is I like to think of the inflatable, flaily, flappy man that's outside of the car wash. That's like awareness. Its only purpose is to catch your eye. So that way you become made aware that there is something over there. And so that's part of their their journey that they have mapped out as a good tool to use. You need service level agreements between your sales and marketing team. That's also part of this womb to tomb. And because again, you need to break down the silos. Otherwise, you're going to end up with sales blaming marketing and marketing blaming sales. And a CRO, if he or she favors sales, then marketing is going to say, hey, but we're doing everything we can. We're pulling in qualified lead. If he or she favors marketing, sales is going to say, hey, like we're not getting any qualified leads. We're executing well. There needs to be this service level agreement that we work in tandem with one another. And
that's tied to that journey that you're talking about.
yes, yep. Who's in charge of what? So that way you know who's responsible for what and how to grade who on what. So you know what metrics to grade your marketing team, what metrics to grade your sales team, and you have an agreement for who oversees what part of that journey.
So I want to quickly double click on this,
Mhm.
and I do want you to continue to wrap up all three of these phases at the high level, and then we can go a little bit further in. But the customer journey, I saw on our group call on Monday, you had I thought was a more novel way of explaining the relationship between sales and marketing, because I've had in my head like, hey, there's a customer journey, womb to tomb, and like let's say it's four main KPIs that are like the biggest, highest level, which is like email, net new meeting, discovery call, close, referral or something like that. But like kind of like four big ones is like, and that will touch sales and marketing. And you had said something along the lines of, because a sales funnel is like almost underneath the customer journey. Like the customer journey is like the first layer of this, but then sales and marketing have a relationship with each other within that journey, and then sales is inside of that, but then also marketing, you said, could also have the internal client of the company. So I don't know, maybe you want to either put a pin in this so you can keep going to finish everything else off, or I just thought it was a really enlightening way of describing it.
Yeah, and we can double click on that for a second. So, and I actually try to avoid the word customer when I'm using journey because they're not a customer until they're actually buying something from you. So, I like to put it as user journey because then it's just somebody that's entering my sphere of existence, whether they ever decide to come closer than 3,000 feet or not, they're just aware that I exist. And that would just be the beginning of a user journey. But I do see that the marketing team does support two types of customers. They support the internal customers and the external customers, just as important as it is for them to have great conversion rates from social media to website traffic to forms filled to nurturing them into raising their hand and saying, I want to now speak to a sales rep. In addition to that, they also then support internal communication strategies, such as if you're looking to adjust something in your culture, or if you're looking to have employee surveys done, like they can help support, or if you have something new to announce in the company, they can help with that communication strategy because they're communication specialists. So there are more responsibilities of the marketing department than there are, say, the sales staff, because their job is to support, go after, target, work with customers that will translate directly into revenue.
And I think being aware just of the time constraints that a department has will just help everybody understand how it's all tied together. Because like I have people I know intimately where they're told that they need outbound KPIs. So they're told that the external customer or prospect matters more, but then they're forced to do all this internal stuff and they don't have the resources to do that stuff. And that's where the service level agreements are like, what are they doing? What are their KPIs? What people do you need for what? But then that marketing team would then, the marketing and the sales team cohesively are working together inside of that user journey that has been identified. And from the boardroom perspective, the user journey, the way I look at it is we are building a ground up forecast, which I know you've got the revenue part for the forecasting in the third phase, but I want to know if there are 4 conversion points, how are we doing? I don't care about all this other stuff from the boardroom, but I do want to know how are our conversions going through each of these, but inside of those 4 leading indicators that land the revenue, all of this stuff is going on.
And it's funny that you say that from the board perspective. So it has been my experience that as long as we're hitting numbers, those types of questions aren't asked. But it is the
Right. I would agree.
responsibility of the CRO for them to always have the answers. And so they do need to be checking and tracking all those critical points. So that way, as they start to see some yellow flags or red flags approaching, say you mentioned 4 KPIs. If one of them starts to signal an issue, then it's their job to be aware of that first and foremost before anybody else has even noticed and start diving into the why so they can try to fix the squeaky wheel, if you will. So it never becomes a problem where all 4 are now signaling that we're into an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I would agree. I would agree with that.
yeah.
And I think the important thing that you said is we don't want to have that conversation at all in that board meeting. But what we're looking for is good explanations
Mm-hmm.
for what's going on from the people that own the buckets. So
Exactly.
if most of my clients are the CEO and on the board, and we've been working on this boardroom playbook, so they're playing both, right? So it's kind of, if there is a CEO that's not the owner, that CEO is responsible from taking the KPIs from the CRO, the COO, and the CFO. But my client is usually both. So then it's kind of this quasi little bit of bleed into some of the overseeing of the numbers in a way that maybe a traditional board wouldn't. But in that situation where, if you think about it, the board or the CEO is asking if, for example, there was something off, all we're looking for is good reasoning.
Yeah.
Like things happen, but and I think that's when after you get done explaining the 3 phases and the questions that you're going to present to the listeners, like, hey, here are the questions that a CR should answer. We're looking for those good answers to say, okay, those things are off. But I think it's important as we're going through this right now is understanding the concepts. So there's the business architecture. See if I can reground us. Business architecture for the revenue, brand, market, and consumer and
Yep.
customer. Womb to tomb, which is the user journey. That's the whole overarching journey. And then sales and marketing are inside of that user journey, working together with an SLA. Okay, I think I got us back to square one.
You did. You did a great job. So after that, we're going to dive down into guardrails then on cost of acquisition. So you've got your womb to tomb. You've got your sales and marketing team with broken down silos, clear agreement between them. And now you need guardrails put into place for cost of acquisition based upon
And we're
your
still in the womb to
gross
tomb,
profit.
right? So
Yep.
okay. So cost of acquisition, you did a great job this week explaining what you think is in it. So most people might be going, it's how much I spend on ads, or it's just my commissions. So what is your definition of client acquisition cost, and why did you use the word guardrails?
So the cost side, I have a list over here, marketing spend, so that your ads, your agencies, your tools, sales compensation, so that's your base plus commission, which a lot of people don't think to add that into it, but you should. Your sales development, and any business development cost, marketing operations, sales operation costs, and then any onboarding costs
Define
required to
onboarding.
close. Onboarding costs would be like if I needed to send you out a packet in order for you to fill out and send back to me. That's just the first thing that pops in my head. So that would be an onboarding cost, that printing and shipping of said packet
Okay.
to you. What is not included is internal labor, fixed costs, and sales management time. So it is a bigger bucket. And oh my goodness, I heard a ridiculous thing from and somebody I won't mention, but they told me I had asked a question in your perspective, what is good marketing ROI? And this is a marketing person I was speaking to. And the answer that I got in return was, well, probably about anywhere from like 30 to 40% of total revenue. I said, wait a second, are we talking about the same thing? And he goes, well, that's how much a business should budget towards marketing. And as
Whoa.
long as you're staying below 30 to 40% of total revenue, then you know that you're doing a good job with your marketing efforts. And I'll stop the conversation there because we
The
don't
poor
have enough
owner
time
who's
to
just got
dive.
that person working for.
That was my very next phone call. I was like, hey, we gotta talk.
Shut off the
Houston,
credit
we have a
cards.
problem.
Oh, that's not
But so
even say, not even like,
guardrails,
yeah, yeah.
guardrails are important because you need to determine your gross profit, like what you want, and you need to take that into account when you're building out your sales reps quotas and you're looking at your cost of acquisition. So that way you can make sure that it doesn't creep up too high and start cutting into your profitability of the business. And your CRO
Uh,
is in charge of all of that, watching
right.
that, tracking that, developing it, building it, teaching the staff it, all of it.
After they helped lead the strategy and the revenue architecture. And what I thought, what like when I figured this out, Kim, it was just like, oh my God, like it becomes one of those objective things that we're like, we don't have to argue about this anymore because a couple comments. The client acquisition cost list of things that you mentioned, it doesn't mean that you're shuffling around your GL codes in your income statement. I just want to get really into the weeds for people where
Yep.
you can, because you have, I mean, SG&A or sales general administrative and overhead is its own bucket, right? But what we're doing is if you have your trailing 12 months and you have your income statement organized the right way, you can pull out these costs to then isolate how much is that expense in relationship to my gross profit. And so, like my old business, it was 20% of gross profit can be client acquisition cost. And then with that guardrail, the way I then map it to then the user journey is like, okay, each size company has a different budget based on their growth perspective, right?
Yep.
So you say, okay, well, now I know I have 20% of this dollar amount. Is it best for salespeople? Is it best for Google paid per click? Is it best for trade shows? Maybe we do billboards. Or you know what? I do like those flappy things out in front of car washes. But it just helps me think about it in a way that's practical and it dismantles all these silos. And just, I don't know. I just love it.
100%. And actually, a way that I had worded it when we were working on the other day is putting all this into practice. So you have your womb to tomb journey documented, understood, clearly defined, your KPIs built out. Within that, you have service level agreements between your sales staff and your marketing staff where they are working hand in hand, doing a three-legged race together throughout the user journey. Underneath that, you have these cost of acquisition guardrails put into place. This structure makes it so that there is complete alignment across sales, marketing, and finance. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is no room for misalignment when you have these things properly put into place.
I love it so much because when we get to phase 3 for my ownership operating system, the layer above this, the compensation plans that I love helping design for the CRO, the COO, and the CFO are tied to revenue, gross margins, and normalized EBITDA and cash. We can interconnect very objective KPIs on an annual basis. So you say, okay, well, CRO is responsible for revenue budget as well as the client acquisition costs, but then we interconnect so that way the COO and the CFO, I don't know, I don't even know if I've gone down through this rabbit hole with you, but we actually commission the CFO. I should say bonus. It's not a commission, but a bonus, the CFO on revenue, a portion of their annual bonus to revenue and gross margins. And then a portion of the CRO to gross margins and to normalized EBITDA. So like effectively each one of these three people it's the six-legged race.
Mm-hmm.
And so we take the big picture of the income statement and then we double click where then all of these KPIs that you're talking about for the CRO, that's what they would be comped on. But then we're actually having an annual bonus plan for the CRO and the COO tied to the CRO hitting their goals. So, but like this, you're laying the groundwork. So which I like how you said it on Monday too. Then we get to systems. So we have the revenue architecture for brand, market, and customer. We then go womb to tomb for the user journey with sales and marketing SLAs, and then client acquisition costs for the guardrails, for the capital. Now we can start building the systems and the governance. And you had said something along the lines of like, you have to do that in that order almost. Otherwise, what happens if you don't? And then maybe describe what you mean by systems.
So systems is multifaceted. First being some form of a CRM system for automations, efficiencies, effectiveness. Modern day technology is awesome. Please start using it. If you're still managing your quotes in Excel, you don't need to. There's free things out there. So it's just there. So your tech stack, I guess, is what I should summarize it up to, is a tech stack, and making sure that your tech stack is in line with where it should be based upon your size of business, kind of business, and your annual revenues. Obviously, you don't need a high-end car if you're not making high-end car type wages type of a deal. But there is plenty of technologies out there for every stage, from a new startup business all the way through 20, 50 million plus type businesses. So your tech stack, forecasting. So we've talked about that. Another conversations that we've had together, where you have your bottoms up forecasting and your top down forecasting. Your CRO should be putting those together with a high degree of reliability. And there's techniques and tactics to do that. And if they don't know how to do that, they should learn how to, or find somebody that knows how to, because they should be able to confidently come to you, Ryan, Mr. Owner, and I say, here's my outlook for 2027. And you asked me, Kim, how confident are you in it? And I said, I'm pretty damn confident, because I've spent the time necessary to be confident in these numbers that I am handing to you. So that's a part of the systems and governance. And then a rhythm, weekly, monthly, quarterly rhythm needs to be established across all teams, supported by your systems. So that way it allows for just strong communication and traction to be had as time goes on. That's how I break them down: tech stack, forecasting, rhythm.
It's awesome. And for the listeners, what Kim and I are working on is we're going to be working on an advanced course that goes inside of the Owners Academy. You'll have your own predictable revenue roadmap, your own predictable revenue assessment, and we'll build it. I'm just pumped for the low level of work that you've been putting onto this. I'm trying to think of where to go here, because I loved the questions that you had. We could go that direction, because that kind of shows what good looks like, but someone needs to know these answers, and maybe we can kind of bounce back and forth if people don't know what they are, because I think we got some good data points and feedback this week of like, okay, there are concepts that not everybody understands. So maybe we ask the question, say what it is. And then maybe down the road in the conversation came of, if there's not a budget, or if there's not someone that manages this spot, what do we do as an alternative to get to the point where we have someone that ultimately owns this? I think we can say that towards the end, because
A good point. Yep.
it's not everybody, right? I mean, even let me digress real quick, because I have a $30 million company. It's like, well, we can't afford a $300,000 CRO, because you put in that title and now you're in the three bills. It's like, okay. Like, so then I think a conversation over fractional people, or like, how does the owner or CEO manage this if they can't have someone that's perfectly overseeing all this? But before we go there, I think it would be in great service to explain these components have to be answered no matter what size company, $1 million company, $100 million company. And then that'll give us context to figure out who should be doing this stuff. What do you think about that approach?
I like it. And I have the list of questions that we went over on Monday. And then I also have a leadership checklist that breaks it down by each section that we just covered.
Yep.
So I think that would be good for us to go through each of those. So from a marketing perspective, whoever's in charge of your marketing, these should be extremely basic questions for them to be able to answer off the top of their head. What is our ICP, which stands for ideal customer profile? What is
Can
our
I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry. So it just because maybe there's a break right off if someone's responsible for your marketing. Well, we don't know who's responsible for this stuff yet, because we haven't gotten there. Maybe we organized, and I don't know if you had these questions organized inside of your three phases.
I do.
So let's call it
there.
the components first, because then I want to end this conversation, which we only do have 40 minutes, believe it or not, everybody. She's got a hard cut off. We can then end with, how do we organize these puzzle pieces so that way we get that outcome? But I think the point I'm trying to make is the components have to be done and are necessary regardless of how big you are.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of got distracted right when you said marketing. But so questions, let's organize them in the kind of the different buckets.
All right. First bucket for the revenue architecture. Like the leader can articulate the ideal customer profile and the winning position without the owner in the room to help support and clarify the answer.
All right. Now, what is that for people?
So that is being able to state who your ideal customer profile is. So clicking into that, breaking that down. That's a lot of people call it, say, like your buyer persona. So you think target audience, you think company size, industry, demographics, male, female, age, whatever the case, location, all of that. But it's breaking it down even further into psychographics from there, motivators, demotivators, anxieties, purchasing behaviors, all of that is wrapped up in the simple acronym ICP.
Love it. Love it. And what's your definition of winning position?
Winning position is your place in the market that makes you unique and is going to make people choose you every day and twice on the day that ends in Y over your competitor. And if you don't know what that is, then you can't even progress further into the rest of everything that we have going on. You have to know what your winning position is in the market. You can even think of it in terms of like boxing. If I'm going to go into the ring, but I know that I'm not as big as the opponent that I'm going up against, I need to have some sort of trick up my sleeve, whether it's I duck really well or whatever the case may be. Like it is my winning position going against my opponent.
I float like a butterfly.
That's right. Oh, that was funny.
I'm glad I made you laugh.
Next gift. We'll work with AI on that one. So that's how I define winning position is what unique thing do you have that's going to beat out your competition?
Love it. All right. So that is first bucket of the revenue architecture. And then we're still inside of that bucket for the next question.
Yep.
Okay.
Your total addressable market is quantified and your sub total addressable markets are prioritized. So oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, my audience is including X, Y, and Z, and there's like 15 different types of personas. Well, your ideal is only one. It's kind of like when my daughter says, I have 3 best friends. I'm like, you can't have 3 bests because best is a superlative. You have 3 very great friends. So just like ICP, you have one ideal customer. What is that total addressable market? And then sure, you might have 14 more customers that would like to potentially buy from you because you sync up in 8 out of 10 areas or whatever the case may be, but prioritize those from 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and so forth.
And if you were really doing next level, you would then map those onto the industry business cycles.
Yes.
We won't get there yet. Okay. Got it. So ICP winning, ICP winning position, and then total addressable market and quantified sub markets. Then what?
From there, it's your offers are mapped to everything that we just talked about. So you're going to have overall, in general, your business has this ideal customer profile, but maybe you have 3 services over here that are most ideal for your third down customer profile that you put forward. So you want to be able to map your solutions to the competitor or to the customer profiles, and then take the next step further back to the winning position, have documented quantitative competitive advantages for each of those scenarios. So I have mapped my services along with my ideal customer matrix, and I have quantitative why me, I'm going to duck and knock you out sentences for each example on that metric matrix.
Love it. Duck and knock you out, wounded tomb. I mean, you have been staring at the ceiling.
It was a dead chicken's fault.
This is awesome. Oh, okay. So we got the 3 dead chicken. Well, that's a whole. We don't have time for the story, but there's a story there, everybody.
Just message Ryan and ask him.
Yeah. So inside the revenue architecture phase, the CRO should be able to articulate all of these answers to the CEO/owner.
on the top of their head. And it does change.
Yep.
This is not something you set it and forget it. This is every year review, research, reanalyze, make sure you're still in the right, like you might be on the matrix, like slightly top right. And then all
Yep.
of a sudden you've calibrated slowly to the left. And now you need to like recalibrate your matrix again.
Especially as the world changes and everything like that. Yeah, that's the whole
Exactly.
point. Yep. Yep. Awesome. All right. So we're on to the second phase of the womb to tomb.
Yeah. Womb to tomb. Document that journey. What do those steps look like? So people can say, sure, I know what our user journey is. Great. Is it documented somewhere? Because I guarantee you go through that exercise, things are going to pop out at you. And then make sure that you have criteria between each of the key like junctures along the journey. So you know what your conversion rates are at the key junctures throughout the journey.
So like what leads to the first, like it's
Yeah, I'll go back
what
to
leads
your
to the
leading
email
indicator.
subscribers, and it's all the different subsetting like things that I really don't want to talk about, but it's like landing pages or ads van or whatever it is. And then it's phone calls and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yep. Everything leads to something else. And what does that domino trail look like? And then how much, what's your conversion rate between the dominoes?
Yep.
That would be your first thing. The second one is having those service level agreements between your sales and marketing team. Are they defined and enforced? Because they should be. It's not just, yeah, they work really great together. They like each other. They go out for beers on Fridays. Nope. Let's have some really clear KPIs and structure around what that looks like.
Hilarious story. I just got to tell. So my wife is in marketing. They're a sales led organization, and I don't think this is very clear. And someone was like, "Hey, we can for sure give you guys product binders." No discussion. Next thing you know, 2 months of my wife's time is finding printers and getting a 500-page product binder that's 300 of these. I know,
Oh
nowhere in the
no.
plan that year, not in the budget. It's just like, and I hear the story and it's like, it makes sense why they did it, by the way. So I'm not knocking why they did it, but it was just like, just whiplash left and right. So then, yeah, that would be a great use case of an SEO.
It would. And also, just to what pops in my head there, Ryan, is below the CRO level if you're a big enough company, or if you're not, and they're actually overseeing more management functionalities between like more, or your COO, this could fall under operations, is having systems in place to handle the communication and the demands and the needs and the priorities of each group because they will occasionally be different. So I'll give you an example. I set up a ticketing system at my previous company where sales had to submit requests to
Mm-hmm.
marketing for
Mm-hmm.
sales enablement things like the product one pagers or I want
Mm-hmm.
a new PowerPoint on this or X, Y, and Z. And I actually had a process where I communicated this to the sales team, and this is what the marketing team followed. We don't touch it for 7 days. We don't look
Mm-hmm.
at your request. We don't touch it. And if in 7 days you still feel the same sense of urgency when you first submitted the request, ping me and let me know, and then I'll move it into queue. Otherwise, let me know what the new priority, because sales is a roller coaster, right? You
Yep.
ride the highs, you ride the lows, and that's never a good idea when you're in sales. So they're like, I need this to do my job. And then marketing jumps through hoops to try to get it done. And so
Yep.
having the right service level agreements where our
Mm-hmm.
agreement
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
submit it to us. 7 days later, we'll follow up with you to see if you still need it. So it's even just little nuances like that
Yeah.
that
Oh,
help.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Um, cool.
Yeah.
So, and then the third and last one of the womb to tomb.
Your guardrails. Are your cost of acquisition figures known? Are the guardrails set, tracked, and tied to the business's gross profit targets?
Love it so much. All right, so we're moving on to then the third one. So
Mhm.
just while you're pulling up so it's revenue architecture, the first phase, ICP and winning position, the total addressable market, quantified submarkets, priorities, and then the third is offers are mapped to ICP and winning position. And then the second phase, womb to tomb, documented customer journey criteria between KPIs and junctions. Fifth milestone to the second, and that is the SLAs between sales and marketing, and then the client acquisition costs and guardrails. So now
You
we're
got it.
back to the third phase, which is now, what do you got that called? Systems or tech stack, or what are you calling it?
Well, the topic overall is systems governance and forecasting. So it's more of a mouthful than the other two. I'll have to come up with something fun so it's just as fun as Womb to Tomb.
I
Maybe
think
some sort of like
systems. I
long.
mean, those are all systems. It's all supporting functions to, I mean, that's where, like, as I look at it's the momentum that we're all building. It's systems that support. Oh, yeah. But okay.
Yeah,
Regardless,
I'm
what
gonna
is
have
that?
a. I'm just gonna play with it. I'm gonna come up with a fun acronym for it. But anyway, so the first one is a tech stack. Um, well, it's
Should they know? Like, so, like, if it's the CRO who should know, because, like you say, they're capable of ripping off all these thoughts and knowledge off the top of their head. What would they have to know about the tech stack? Like how it's working, where the data's at? I mean, like, how would you position that?
they have the reporting they need to answer any question coming from the owner at any given moment.
Love it.
Their team members are highly efficient, aka not duplicate data entry, lots of admin work and steps, lots of waste in the process. And the CRO should also know that the data can be trusted. So there's a level of hygiene in the systems where the information coming out of it is trustworthy.
Love it.
I think those are the things
That's
that
a
I
sore subject, I think, probably for quite a few people. It's like,
would. It takes a lot of work. Again, I'll just give quick props to the previous company. We had used HubSpot and we actually got an email. There's either an email or a phone call from a HubSpot rep saying that we had the cleanest HubSpot system out of all of their clients.
oh shit.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was, but
Wow.
we put work into it every week, every month. We made sure that the data was clean.
So that, okay, I just need to then even zoom out one layer and go. So the team that I am really enjoying with working with is you and then Pat. Cause, like, if that's the case on HubSpot, the data point where I know Pat knows his shit is there was one point where he was going to sell their company to a large multinational. And the person looked at Pat and says, "You have a weird way of negotiating." He goes, "Yeah, how's that?" He goes, "You don't." Because every single number was right. It was just like, so it was back to, like, okay, everything's correct. So what are we here to talk about?
There
So
is no negotiation.
yeah, we know what we have here. And that's the point that I wanted to make is what good looks like is what we're striving for. And knowing that I'm on the clock here, we got a little over 25 minutes. Regardless of the size of the company, we just got to figure out how do we get there and how do we make incremental steps. You can't do it all at once. So this is
No.
helpful. All right. So then the eighth module and the eighth question bucket.
So we did the tech stack, and then the next would be forecast, and then the next is your rhythm. So
What's
can
what before the ribbon? What's the forecast? So if this is a question, what is the CRO doing to have a good forecast?
they should have a reliable bookings forecast and know how that translates into a revenue forecast and have that reliable revenue forecast for the owner that they can explain every nuance and detail where every number came and the rationale and reasoning behind every single number that's in there. It's not well, that's what we did last year, so we figured we were going to do it this year. There needs to be a methodical, grounded in data, algorithms, and all the things to come up with the right number. And you can do that through all the leading indicators because you have the womb to tomb completely
You've done
mapped
everything up
out.
until this point to actually make that a possibility.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Um, the revenue buildup forecasting. So, it was probably about 3 months ago, you and I did the budgeting series, little mini series. Revenue is 50% of the effort because, in the board meeting I was in last week, it's like everything falls into place. Like once we believe the certain numbers, well, we got to hit certain margins. I mean, we can't just make up our margins completely, but it's like small tweaks. And then we got to hit our normalized EBITDA in our cash position because it becomes a constraint based off of revenue build.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this stuff makes even the annual budgeting so much easier.
Yep. 100%. I would not imagine wanting to put a budget into place without it. I know many people do.
Yeah,
I just don't
really
recommend it.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with my personal finances.
We're gonna do that. Says my butt. Weekly, monthly, and quarterly. Like, walk me through your meetings, like back into your old company. And I know you've ran a bunch of these meetings. I've been a part of some as well. What did your meetings look like?
So thinking to a CRO level, not sales manager, not like in the weeds personnel. A CRO level, a weekly is going to be more, I'm going to use an EOS term, like an L10, where you issue process, you review on track, off track for goals, and you're thinking of broader spectrum type thinking for the business. Monthly, you're doing a deeper dive into the specific analytics of your sales and your marketing to identify what's working well and what's not working well. Where did we miss? Where did we exceed? All of that. And then quarterly, you're looking at a broader trend. So that way you can see how this quarter compared to last year's at this time and start to gauge a reasonable understanding of where you can expect like how your overall year is going, because it takes 3 months to make a trend. And so using your rates of change and stuff like that, you can clearly see that trend of where you're headed.
Do you see like that CRO, if someone has someone truly responsible for all this stuff, having like a weekly, monthly, and quarterly for them and their lower level, but also them and their peers? So like when I think about them and their lower level, it would be like sales manager, marketing director, that kind of stuff to push down these initiatives. But then at the weekly L10 with the COO and then the CFO talking about interdepartmental functional constraints with each other. And then like, the CEO, senior leadership team for like the quarterlies as well. So it's almost like you're having two in parallel, right?
Correct. Yep. I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it isn't just peers or just up. It has to be with your lieutenants that work side by side with you out on the field.
Mm-hmm. So, one thing that I like as we look at the next 20 minutes, and we don't even have to go to the whole 20 minutes if we think we've covered a lot of ground. I think this is fantastic. And I know we're going to both use this transcription to also help us with the assessment, as you probably were thinking that as we were doing this.
I was like, this is great.
This has been very beneficial for everybody. So it's, I maybe I'll frame it up with the challenges I've seen on the 3 executive level. So at the risk of being too long-winded, I just still want to set the context, Kim, because it's so important, because I really want to hear your answer on how you think that the jigsaw puzzle could work for resources to help with this. And then how does it progress over time? So I think that's probably the question. Let me give you some context of how I'm coming at it. So the question is, given that people are going to be at a range of sizes that are listening to this, we can't just jump straight to the, hey, I've got a CRO. But everything you mentioned can't go ignored. And or it has to be prioritized. So like, yes, certain things might have to be put to the wayside, but there is an order to do these things, which is why you and I are going to work on the roadmap of like the order to do these things. And kind of thinking about Darren, who's like, okay, that was a lot, Kim. Where do I start? So that's where we want to get to. But like the context that I'm coming at this from, Kim, is as I look at the 3 functions of a company: revenue, gross margins, and normalized EBITDA and cash, so finance. It's the CRO, the COO, and then the CFO, and then the CEO sits on top.
Yep.
Responsible for getting all 3 of those people to do their job. So it's all like, and Joel Trammell, I'll put the podcast link in there, the chief executive operating system. He's got a bunch of great stuff that I pull on about like how to think about a CEO. CEO should have no tasks. They're moving the company, which is the income statement, to ownership's goals through these three people. And then those three people are responsible for their three big buckets. We interconnect them with their compensation. The income statement is tied to the cash flow and the valuation goals of ownership. That is how a company works, regardless of how big it is. Like you're $1 million, you still have revenue, gross profit, and normalized EBITDA. You still have ownership goals. The thing that I'm trying to help with, and what I think you and I are both trying to accomplish, is use the constraints of cash flow, time, and wealth to manage the priorities. To say we're going to have to do certain things at certain times because we can't do it all at once. And that's where I think, systems like EOS or scaling up, they don't look at the constraints using the ownership goals. We have to point all of the stuff in a direction using the constraints. So like with the CFO, it's like, okay, crap, I don't have enough money for a $300,000 CFO. So I still would like the forecast. I still would like, you still go through, and the owner who is dealing with the chaos still wants all this stuff. It's like, how do I figure out what to do in what order? And the challenge is that the owner CEO, the owner operator, has to understand this stuff to make sure that they use service providers and or their doers, like a controller or a marketing director or a sales manager, because otherwise the whole picture is not getting taken into account. And that's where everything, all the wheels wobble off. So it's this weird dynamic and dance. You're going, okay, if the owner knows this stuff and understands what we just talked about and can acknowledge it, then they can at least manage a sales director or or an agency to the outcomes where they're not pissing away 30% of revenue on ads. Am I making some sense here? Where like understanding the whole outcome as the owner operator's job, but then going, okay, if I'm 5 million or 30 million, like one of my clients still is a larger company, and they're like, I'm just hiring a sales director or VP of sales, not a CRO right now. But that doesn't mean we don't do these things.
Correct.
What are your thoughts about how to approach the resources, the size, the priorities?
I have lots of thoughts. I'm trying to put them in an order of operations that makes sense versus just as they're jumping into my brain. I'm back to CFO, COO, CRO, and please tell me, because I could just be biased, but in my mind, very simply put, you need to pull in revenue enough to have to worry about how to use your financial strategically in running your business and having the statement cash flow and everything else. So the revenue has to come first. And if you're smaller and you're focusing on bringing in more revenue, you don't really need a COO to run operations until you're a larger entity. And so in my mind, but I don't think it has to be a CRO either. I think the title, my last title when I lived in the corporate world was vice president. So it wasn't even CRO at that point, but I was definitely doing all of this and more in that role. So I think it's less so much a title and it's more so skills that's important, and teachability
and
coachability.
Outcomes. Yep.
And to your point, the knowledge of the owner. So if the owner is not strong in one of these buckets, then they need to, in one way or another, find somebody else who is stronger in it or can learn it very quickly. Whether that's you take your current bookkeeping accountant that you have and you spool him or her up to a controller role, and then you work to spool him or her up to a higher strategy role. Like you work within the means that you have, but always looking to strengthen, in my mind, revenue, finances, and operations.
Yeah.
It's kind of the order that goes in my brain.
I love it. And I'll give two kind of spectrum responses that I got on a call with a guy yesterday. He was a prospect for the coaching program. And my response is, you need to sell more shit. You don't need me. You need more revenue. Like, You don't have enough, like, because my program is going to show you how much more money you need to spend. Like, it's not gonna, like, you need more money. And so the like revenue and looking at it the way that you are and the way that you've laid it out, I think is very helpful. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and owner operators started in, I mean, you got to sell your stuff, right?
Mm.
So whether they're a born salesperson or they're an architecture who has to go get clients, I mean, there's probably a lot more outbound, nature of the founder that's driving revenue. And there's a lot of good ways to continue to invest in that with the playbook that you've laid out. The other end of the spectrum, which I think is fascinating, and I'm curious on what your reaction to this is, a lot of the people that I'm working with currently who get to a certain size, call it like the 20, 30, $40 million, they're in this trap because cash flow, specifically on the geeky side, it's working capital, inventory, receivables, debt, taxes, owner's distributions are so muddled up that they're like, I can't see how I can make more than I'm $500,000. Like, it's like, let's say the owner's finally making $500,000 as the CEO. And they're like, well, if I grow more, I have less money. So then there's this weird paradox of like, okay, like more sales is actually not the answer because I need to figure out, like, back to then, like what I think would be so like is so powerful. We have a 3-statement model where we can actually see the constraints of working capital and cash. Then it's like, now what we're going to do is you're going to reinvest only this much money. It's like the sniper approach. Like, okay, now I can make $500,000. If we grow this much more, we can negotiate receivables, we can negotiate inventory deals. And then Kim, as the CRO, I want to take 400 grand and literally sniper it into one of these parts of that KPI cut user journey to get the highest return. So then you're using those guardrails because the cash flow becomes a limiting factor. And that's why with Pat and with the model and the training program, if we can get people to see the matrix like that as fast as possible, they can literally turn around and give it back to the CRO to say, go find us more money now. And we know we're not going to break ourselves on the back end.
Yeah, no, and I can see that. It's a great alternate perspective where revenue isn't an issue. It's the being able to see what's going on within the business is the issue. And that's either an operational thing or a finance thing, depending on where the issue lies. So maybe that's the answer to the question. Instead of chicken or egg, or where do you invest first? It's where does the owner have strengths? And then where is it that you're struggling the most right now? Is it bringing in new business or maintaining business? Or is it, I don't know, I'll have clear line of sight into where anything is going and what things are costing me to be able to more effectively run my business.
Yeah. And that's where as you and I continue to build out our combined sales funnel together for both of our programs, the ownership assessment helps people see like their constraints across the 9 modules to figure out what are one of those departments that we need to focus on first so we can keep that escape velocity momentum growing. Then inside of that is, module 5 for me is your whole program, right? So then it's like, okay, for predictable revenue, then we're double clicking. As you and I are saying, it's a fractal then. So now I'm now back to another 3 phases and 9 modules and the whole roadmap for you for revenue. The challenge that, and it's the same thing on finance, the challenge that I see in these departmental issues is the lack of understanding of the doers internally and the complete and utter misalignment with agencies, whether it's telemarketing agent, you're already laughing, telemarketing agencies or pay-per-click agencies or website development agencies, or we set appointments for you. And it's this pure fear that drives the owner operator to spend more money to try and have the magic wand for more revenue. And these agencies or people are going to naturally just say, oh, sure, I can do that. And then all of a sudden the outcome is not there. So like the question I think trying to wrestle with is knowing that that's the main problem and there's not a ton of resources to assign a perfect Kim Clark to the problem. How do you, jigsaw your way to the outcome without falling in these ridiculously painful traps?
a really good question, Ryan, because I would like to think that there are many more capable professionals at that CRO think everything that we've been talking about right now. But you're right. The people that will just continue to take your money because they're deploying ideas are, I mean, in the thousands. I mean, they're everywhere. And so I mentioned on my podcast with my dad yesterday, if you feel like you're shooting from the hip or throwing spaghetti at the wall, you are. Like if you feel that way, then you are. And everything that we've talked about here today, everything that you and I are building is a system that is predictable, teachable, and on purpose. It is
Mhm.
not, it is the direct opposite of that feeling. Is basically like that. And so I know that doesn't give an exact answer. I've worked with a fractional person or work with, I can't list off the top of my head, here's the person to go to if
I
you're
know.
feeling
That's the
this
struggle.
way.
That's the
Because it's
struggle, right?
just, that I have all of my clients that I'm working with have mentioned to me the amount of money they've invested in some form or another in agencies, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting down with a friend of mine. They're $1 million into salespeople's payroll in the last 24 months with, I'm trying to think of how they worded it. He said, I have more gross profit in my pocket right now than with from that, which was not like a couple pennies. So, um, it's all, and I think this is the rampant issue of all advisors and all consultants who are just trying to pay their own bills when the owner doesn't understand how all these components fit together. And the only thing I can give as an analogy is the healthcare system is a complete and utter train wreck dumpster fire in the US. No one cares about how we feel other than ourselves. We have to be responsible for understanding it, because what I think about, Kim, in our programs, it's knowledge, and it's so cliche, but knowledge becomes power for decision making.
Yeah.
And decision making that's clear compounds faster than anything else because we know where to spend our time and our money. So it's like the whole stop running through the forest to figure out which direction you're going first. Because, and I am truly curious, I want to hear your thoughts about how I think that we can solve this and what your and I's mission is. And also with the likes of Pat and other people is, if owner operators know how this shit works, it's easier to spot the people that don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yes, 100%. I
So
see
like,
that also with my clients. Like my call that I have coming up after here. He was working with like 6 or 7 different vendors, hired me. At this point, I think he's fired 50% of them and he's on his way to firing the other 50% because he's like, I've talked with Kim 3 times and now I know all of you are BS and don't know what you're
uh-huh.
doing.
Yep.
Like, so I think you're right. Once an owner sees what good looks like, the light bulb goes off and they're like, that makes sense. I just didn't know it could be real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's just so important to share that with them.
Yeah, it's like I go back to that call on Monday with the group. Like, it's like you and I are not trying to overwhelm anybody, because I've gotten that feedback, and for a long time I was like hesitating. Like, I know him a lot. Like, I know I love a lot of this stuff, but like, if we don't know this, we're just making shit up and we're just getting screwed, and not on purpose by all these people. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's like it's not. It's to learn this stuff, not to do it. And I think Darren specifically said that, right? It's like,
Mhm.
it's so that way we can delegate.
Yeah.
Right? It's learn it, go, okay, now I know what ICP and winning position is. Now I know what the client acquisition costs and how to actually calculate that. Thank you for the list. We don't have that. So it's like, by going through these 9 modules and the 3 phases in this assessment, it's like, okay, now I can look at my agency or my manager. And it's like, you don't have to hire that person right away. And I get encouraged, Kim, because, and I'm curious on your side with your clients, I watch my clients, and like, with my owner operators education, they're capable of leveling up their internal people at a
Mm.
rate that's way further, way faster than being able to like hire other outside people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that in most cases. Yeah.
What do you think we're missing? Is there anything else that you want to cover before we part ways?
I'm trying to think. We covered a lot of ground, what good looks like. If you feel like you're shooting from the hip, you probably are. Number one trait my dad said on our recent podcast of an owner is to be open to change. And then my number one piece of advice was always try to surround yourself with people smarter than you.
I love that. I agree with that. That's why I love working with you. As a maybe a takeaway for both of us is we are working towards doing our 90-day boardroom blueprints together. Hopefully, I got a couple people like hopefully April if we want to launch one.
Yeah.
So something that on the ownership side, you have your chief revenue officer, your predictable revenue coaching program that we are actively working on. All of those are going to be inside of the Owners Academy. So you and I are both actively working in conjunction with each other to try and organize all this stuff. We'll have roadmaps and assessments, like all based on the stuff that you're talking about. Anything else you want to lay the groundwork with? I know it's not all out tomorrow, but we're going to keep doing these podcasts and hopefully people keep following along.
Yeah. No, I think the only thing that I would add to that is that I wouldn't necessarily use the word try. We are building, and I am super excited for when it all goes live and we can help all these people. Because there's obviously a need there for it.
Well said. We're crushing it. Like I'm freaking pumped. Like yeah, these tools that we're building it's so fun watching it come into action because it's organized ideas that make sense to people. And I mean, even a little takeaway for everybody, because it's February 5th as we record this, depending on when you listen to it, we either have this entire assessment done for Kim or throw this transcription from YouTube into GPT and come up with a list of questions for yourself that you should be asking your agencies and your salespeople, because you can grab the transcript and just go do it yourself.
I like it. Accountability. It's key.
All right, Kim. Well, we look at that. We got 2 extra minutes. Who would have thought we
did
that?
Thanks for having me on, Ryan. Lots of fun talking through it. I appreciate it.